Thank you, Garvel, all those who have added to our worship this morning. The ebb and flow of human history reveals how fickle we human beings really are. Periods of great revival have invariably been followed by moving away from God that has marked every generation. The church has been called by Jesus Christ to penetrate society as salt and light. We are the church, but by default, our silence has allowed American society to deteriorate to a new low in moral fiber and spiritual strength. The rapid pace of dramatic geographical and societal changes have many of our people reeling and rocking. Big and quick economic swings leave us fearful. The increased complexity of modern life is leaving many people behind. The traditional American family is nearly a thing of the past. The loss of our moral and spiritual compass is a tragedy of major proportion. From a country proudly and almost exclusively, in fact 99.8% Christian in 1776, we have become diminishingly Christian to be a largely secular society that has literally banned the reference to God from the marketplace and our daily lives. The enemies of our faith have had a heyday, curtailing the practice of Christian faith and the mention of God in our daily lives. Sadly, we have been too silent and compliant with their desire to minimize and eliminate any reference to God. USA Today, just last week, had a full-page ad. Atheists don't have a prayer in Congress. That's why the Freedom from Religious Foundation and its co-president, Dan Barker, are suing Congress. They want to have an atheist prayer. I don't know who they'd pray to. Our forebears, who pledged their fortunes and sacred honor, and all those brave heroes who have fought and died to give us this land of the free and home of the brave, are turning over in their grave. Do you realize that over 100,000 Americans are buried on foreign soil, having died in historic battles? It pays us to remember our foundations. 56 men signed the Declaration of Independence, and all paid a great price to give us our land of the free. 5 were captured by the British and tortured before they died. 12 had their homes sacked, looted, occupied by the enemy, or burned. 2 lost their sons in the army. 1 had 2 sons captured. Of the 56, 9 died in the war from its hardships or from its bullets. No wonder John Quincy Adams said, "You will never know how much it cost my generation to preserve your freedom. I hope you make good use of it." It was President Ronald Reagan who said, "Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. It must be fought for, protected, and handed down, or one day we will spend our sunset years telling our children what it was like in the United States when we were free." The voices of Christianity have too long been silent. We have an urgent need for God to raise up a strong and godly leader. I'd be less than honest if I didn't say I don't see one. But we all need to pray that there will be someone like a Josiah of the Old Testament. Let me read just a few verses of what he did as king. Then the king sent them together, all the elders of Judah and Jerusalem, to him. I'm reading from 2 Kings chapter 23, verses 1 through 8. And the king went up to the house of the Lord with all the men of Judah, and with him all the inhabitants of Jerusalem. the priests and the prophets and all the people, both small and great. And he read in their hearing all the words of the book of the covenant which had been found in the house of the Lord. Then the king stood by a pillar and made a covenant before the Lord to follow the Lord and to keep his commandments and his testimonies and his statutes with all his heart and all his soul, to perform the words of this covenant that were written in this book. And all the people took their stand for the covenant. And the king commanded Hilkiah, the high priest, the priest of the second order, and the doorkeepers to bring out of the temple of the Lord all the articles that were made for Baal, for Ashereth, and for all the host of heaven. And he burned them outside Jerusalem in the fields of Kidron and carried their ashes to Bethel. Then he removed the idolatrous priest from the kings of Judah, had ordained to burn incense on the high places in the cities of Judah and in the places all around Jerusalem, and those who burned incense to Baal, to the sun, to the moon, and to the constellations, and to all the host of heaven. And he brought out the wooden image from the house of the Lord to the brook Kidron outside Jerusalem, burned it at the stake of Kidron, and burned it to ashes to the ground, and threw its ashes on the graves of the common people. Then he tore down the ritual booths of the perverted persons that were in the house of the Lord, where the women wove hangings for the wooden image. And he brought all the priests from the cities of Judah and defiled the high places where the priests had burned incense from Geba to Beersheba. Also he broke down the high places at the gates, which were at the entrance of the gate of Joshua, the governor of the city, which were to the left of the city gate. Listen, it's time for someone to rise up and take a stand. From the very beginning, Josiah followed the Lord, the worship of the Lord and of the idols, to gain the worship of God. The first thing he did was the renewal of the covenant, including a personal recommitment of himself. Are there those here this morning that need that experience? He removed all the idols and burned them. He got rid of the idolatrous priests. He wiped out pagan worship, removed all superstitions, and reinstituted the Passover feast. I do not see such a leader now on the scene. We must pray that such a leader is somewhere in America today who will call our nation back to God. But meanwhile, it is vital for each of us to do our part. We are losing our spiritual freedom little by little. And when our religious freedom disappears, all other freedoms follow thereafter. We hear so much today about the wall of separation of church and states. Our enemies have convinced so many that those words are in the First Amendment of the Constitution. No way. No way. Congress shall make no law respecting establishment of religion, or make no law prohibiting the free exercise thereof. The ACLU and other enemies of our faith have used this erroneous phrase to prevent any mention of God in schoolrooms and public offices. They have used it to prevent prayers at sports games, graduation exercises, and governmental meetings. Those who call themselves progressives today want to remove any reference to God in our society. And they want us not only to give them the freedom to do that, but they expressed us to embrace that same view. A little boy in the 5th grade was reading his Bible at recess. A teacher grabbed him by the ear and took him to the principal's office, where she took the Bible, threw it in the wastebasket, and said, "This is where garbage like this belongs. You are violating the principle of separation of church and state." The little kid didn't know what she was talking about. Listen, this is God's land. We are a people of God. The security of America's future is not in our vast economic resources. It is not in our industrial power. It is not in our technological superiority. It is not in our scientific ingenuity. It is not in our diplomatic skill. It is not in our military might. Our real defense against all the evils of today is in our strongly held spiritual convictions. It is in the character and commitment of our people to the God of the universe. We must become a generation of Americans who walk with God and who are committed to see his righteousness restored in the hearts and houses of our people. I don't know about you, but I've had enough of those who scoff at or make fun of our Lord and our faith. I am at odds with those who think obscenity is a part of culture. I am mad at those who are the producers and purveyors of filth and are leading our next generation to the gutter. I am more than disturbed by those who have given free rein to the voices of evil and muzzled those of us who would tell of God's love. I am tired of it being all right to cuss, kill, and have sex on television, but you can't pray in an American schoolroom. I am sick and tired of questionable business practices, the rash of insider trading, the giving away of national secrets, the using of organizational assets for personal gain, all reflecting the increasing secular society and dictating the need for a strong spiritual revival. It is time for those here to reshape our values and rededicate ourselves to, as one of the presidential candidates says, to make America great again. We need to return to old-fashioned religion, old-fashioned morality, old-fashioned decency, old-fashioned purity, Christ-centered homes. We need to be bold in speaking out against the evils of our day. We dare not be silent or on the sidelines in the battle that is raging. Our finest hour comes when danger is close, when despair is near, when the wind is contrary. Reuben A. Torrey was a widely known evangelist of yesteryear. He left home an ungodly man, but his mother said to him as he walked out the door, "Reuben, when the way is dark, son, call on God." Thankfully, one day in a hotel room, things got pretty dark for him, and he called on God. And instead of taking his life, he gave his life to the Savior and became a powerful preacher of the Word. Historian Charles Byrd was asked if he could summarize the lessons of history in a brief book. He said he could do it in 4 sentences, and here they are. Whom the gods would destroy, they first make mad with power. The mills of God grind slowly, but they grind exceedingly fine. The bee fertilizes the flower it robs, and when it is dark enough, you can see the stars. The devil loves to play on our discouragements. It is getting increasingly tough to stand for Christ in our spiritually bankrupt society. But God has disarmed the principalities and power, and the power of the cross can dramatically release each of us. This morning hour is a great hour for each of us to make a new commitment to the unchanging purposes of God and to give our best effort to returning God to first place in our American lives and American society. Let us pray. And while we were in the attitude of prayer, I wish us to sing a very familiar chorus. He touched me. I'll never forget that day, will you? He touched me, and oh, the joy that floods my soul. Something happened, and now I know he touched me and made me whole. Maybe he needs to touch some here this morning. If he's speaking to you, listen to the still, small voice of God and do what it says, will you? He touched me, oh, he touched me, and oh, the joy that floods my soul. Something happened, and now I know he touched me and made me whole. He touched me. He touched me. Does he want to touch you this morning? Are you listening to the still small voice? Please obey what it says. Something happened, and now I know he touched me and my prayer this morning is, touch me again, Lord. Touch me again. This moment I feel that event and thou canst heal. So touch me again. We all need the fresh touch of God on our lives. Let him touch you, will you, this morning? Come along as we're singing again. Touch me again, Lord. Touch me again. This moment I feel that afresh thou canst heal. So touch me again. Once more, for you who are holding between the, listen to the voice of God. Let him touch you, will you, as we're singing. Touch me again, Lord. Touch me